My name is Georgina Rose, and welcome back to the Darling YouTube channel. On this channel, I discuss everything related to magic, mysticism, religion, and everything on the fringe of esoterica. I am a perennialist and polytheist, and in this video, I'm going to be addressing a topic that I'm asked about all the time, and for good reason. It's how do I, as a pagan or polytheist, essentially someone who's not interested in the Abrahamic tradition and want to worship multiple gods, do ceremonial magic? Because let's face it, most popular ceremonial magic is incredibly Abrahamic. But the thing is, ceremonial magic and paganism are not mutually exclusive things. In fact, ceremonial magic itself is something that originates in paganism. So, let's get into it. To start, I think it's worth exploring what people even mean by ceremonial magic. So, when people are talking about ceremonial magic, often what they are picturing is stuff like the Solomonic tradition, which is essentially a tradition of ritual magic that comes from these grimoires called the Keys of Solomon, in which someone invokes God, the Abrahamic God, to then command the lesser spirits or demons to do their bidding. This is the most popular grimoire on the subject, especially in a world where Hereditary is a popular horror film, and Hereditary references that grimoire a lot. And the thing is, that is an explicitly Christian grimoire. Now, there are some people who take that in other directions, but the Goetia itself, very Christian, very God-fearing. And when we look at popular traditions associated with ceremonial magic that come a bit later in time, we see things like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, who, while they are not properly Christian, do have a heavy Christian influence. If you look at Hermetic ritual, you do see a fusion of some ancient Egyptian ideas and, some Neoplatonic ideas and Neoplatonic philosophy, but there's a heavy dose of Abrahamicism in there. The most popular ceremonial magic ritual that people learn is known as the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, which comes from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. That ritual begins with what is known as the Kabbalistic cross, where some pulls the spears of Kabbalah through their body and then, uses angels, archangels, to then banish evil spirits and foster a stronger body of light or energetic body. Once again, pretty Abrahamic. So a lot of people who have a very strong pagan perspective find ceremonial magic intimidating or even think that it's not for them. But that's not the truth. So ceremonial magic is ritual magic, or magic that is done in a ceremonial form. That is going to be complex ritual processions, typically based upon ritual formula. When you look at modern Abrahamic ceremonial magic, what you see is everything has a formula. Now, it's not explicitly Abrahamic. I'm talking about Thelema, which is a bit more on the pagan direction. But if you read this book, Liber ABA, or the Big Blue Book associated with Thelema, which is a big teaching text for ceremonial magic, you will see a lot of the book is devoted to formulas. So basically, there's different ways to create these rituals, and then based on these formulas, magic happens. These formulas are backed by things like gematria, planetary alignment, and Kabbalah. Once again, there is a little bit of an Abrahamic influence in there, even in a tradition that, is definitely more on the pagan side of the spectrum, like Thelema. So if you're a true pagan, right, you're someone who really wants to stick to just polytheism. Let's say you're a pagan reconstructionist or someone who wants to build their pagan path based on reconstructing historic pagan faiths from the past. What do you do, right? Are you resigned to only doing folk magic? While folk magic is a beautiful tradition, a lot of people, that's not necessarily their jam. Things that are like making talismans and charms and effigies and the sort of things that go with folk magic and, herbal magic, plant magic, and the stuff that people now call witchcraft, right? A lot of people, they do want more than that, especially when you look at these ancient paintings of ancient pagans and you see ritual. Like if you look at ancient Greek and ancient Roman paintings, you see everyone in those big togas and they're at, the temple with the columns and they're worshiping the gods. Like that looks pretty ceremonial. And it is, right? Folk magic and witchcraft are not the only ways that pagans can do magic and pagans can do ritual. That is popular because a lot of people's gateway drug into esotericism and into paganism is Wicca, which obviously Wicca literally is a witchcraft tradition. But ceremonial magic comes from the pagan world. In fact, Ronald Hutton, one of the key academic scholars on paganism in Europe and in the modern world, Ronald Hutton, who has written several great books, has an entire book on the concept of pagan survival. And what he means by pagan survival are things from the ancient pagan world that after the European conversion remained within the Christian tradition. And he argued that there are four main ways that pagan survivals happen. One, folk customs, so that's like festivals and events. 2, folk magic, that's that witchcraft stuff that I just mentioned, like doing things about evil eye removal and charms and, good luck things, right? Mythology and the general reverence for myth and art that people have in Europe. And 4, ceremonial magic. So that is literally stating that ceremonial magic is a pagan survival. Because if you look at the Bible or the Torah or the Quran, none of those texts really have explicit ceremonial magic instructions. Of course, within the Bible, there are certain, practices where, Jesus performs miracles or whatever, but these elaborate ritual processions that we see, they're not in the Bible, right? They come from practitioners. And when we look historically, there is one text that really shows the pagan root of ceremonial magic, and that is known as the Greek magical papyri. So the Greek magical papyri is a text, a grimoire from antiquity that is quite interesting in a lot of ways. Of course, it is from Greece because it's the Greek magical papyri. I mean, context clues, I think you could figure that out. But there is quite a bit of syncretism with some other traditions going on in the area. We know historically syncretism was quite common amongst pagan people. But this grimoire is explicitly pagan. It calls on the gods regularly. It invokes all sorts of other spirits because, of course, pagans don't just believe in the gods. There are other spirits in pagan cultures. Now, this text has several actual rituals in it that are clear predecessors to modern ceremonial magic. And so if you want to get into ceremonial magic and you're a pagan who does not want to compromise and do Abrahamic material, a lot of the stuff that is pushed by ceremonial magic curriculums actually roots back to paganism because of the Greek magical papyri. First, I think it's worth looking at the holy guardian angel concept. So the holy guardian angel is a big thing that is pushed in Thelema or Hermeticism, and really anyone who gets into ceremonial magic discusses it. It's actually part of my little outro at the end of my video. And the holy guardian angel in Western esotericism is believed to be a guiding spirit that is attached to you spiritually. So basically, this HGA, it's tethered to you, and through ritual, you are able to discover it and commune with it. And the holy guardian angel helps guide you on a path through your true will and your highest purpose. Within Catholic prayers, there are prayers to the guardian angel, and many believe that the holy guardian angel and the guardian angel are essentially the same spirit. But one specific practice that is done heavily by people all across Western ceremonial magic is this process of gaining knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel, or K+C. So to gain K+C, essentially what you do is you go through a period of prayers and purification and fasting, and then you do a series of invocations, and then you do some bindings, and then you have knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel, who then guides you down the rest of your path. For a lot of people, they get all this information from a text known as the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. This is a very explicitly Abrahamic text. It's specifically actually quite Kabbalistic. Now, this concept actually predates Abrahamicism, but it's under another name. In the Greek magical papyri, the text I mentioned just a second ago as an antiquity pagan grimoire actually has a ritual in which you conjure your holy daemon. So daemon, I think some red flags are going off in people's heads and they think I'm saying demon. No, daemon, it's spelled differently. It's either D-A-E-M-O-N or D-A-I-M-O-N instead of D-E-M-O-N, is actually just a term for spirit. Daemon is neutral. Specifically, there is a well-known anecdote when Socrates, the very famous philosopher I'm sure we all have heard of, actually had a daemon that he would speak to. And the daemon is a intelligent, wise spirit that guides you through life. Everyone has their own daemon. You see how this is the same idea, just surviving into Abrahamicism? And in the Greek magical papyri, there is actually a ritual in which you contact your holy daemon. It's a lot less complicated than the Abramelin ritual. I will give the Abramelin ritual that. It is a very complex ritual, but this is still a ceremonial ritual. There is still that purification concept. There is still then the invocations and the conjurations of the holy daemon, and then repeatedly calling up the holy daemon to guide you through life. This also parallels the Islamic mystical concept of the Quran. Once again, it exists in paganism. Now, another ritual within the Greek magical papyri that is also worth referencing is the headless ritual. So if you are familiar with Western ceremonial magic, you will know that there are two very popular rituals, the Bornless ritual and Liber Samek. And these rituals are sort of Swiss Army knife rituals. They are often called, specifically with the Bornless ritual, the preliminary invocation of the Goetia. And basically what it is people use this ritual to, as I said with Goetia, what you do is you call God into you and then you use God to command the demons, right? So this is the ritual that you use to call God into you. But I also have seen the Bornless ritual used for a bunch of other things. A lot of people use it as a purification ritual, since it is just calling God into you and just one-shotting your brain with God. It's a very powerful purification. I have seen people use it as a curse-breaking ritual. I have seen people use it to get rid of like spiritual diseases of the heart or something like that. But it actually directly has a pagan root. It itself is a pagan survival. The headless ritual actually comes from the Greek magical papyri, and it is literally basically the same ritual. Like the lines are the same and it does the exact same thing, though in the Greek magical papyri it is framed as an exorcism. But you could use it to get rid of miasma, to get rid of pollution. And actually one of the words in it is pollution. That references miasma, which is an explicitly pagan concept. Miasma, or spiritual pollution, are diseases that we acquire by doing things against the will of the gods, or by being around dirt or being around death or anything like that. So exorcism, because of the headless ritual, we can know with the fact that the entire concept of exorcism, which is of course a form of ceremonial magic, does actually predate Christianity. We associate exorcism with the Catholic Church in most people's minds, but that concept predates Christianity, because the idea of evil spirits or demons or anything like that, or jinn or whatever, is not a Christian idea. That is a pagan survival. They just would argue that our gods are demons, which is obviously wrong, but the idea of like banishing evil spirits, that predates it. So a lot of these literal rituals that ceremonial magicians are doing are pagan survivals and are from the Greek magical papyri. They are in there. As well, I see pretty frequently in pagan ceremonial magic where, modern Abrahamic people use God, Helios, or the god of the sun, is used because the sun represents kingship and power and all of that. So a big thing in pagan ceremonial magic is heavily working with the sun. Specifically, I see Helios used a lot. But there are other invocations. When I continue to look through the Greek magical papyri, there are several invocations to Hecate, the goddess of the moon, witchcraft, and outsiders, and they are long, lengthy invocations. They are the same type of invocation that you would see if you were doing an invocation in a modern ceremonial magic tradition. They are long, they have all those components, and a big thing that you see in invocations that starts with talking about the spirit as external, and then at the end talking of it as internal. So it would say like, Hecate, great goddess of the witcheries, great goddess of the outsiders, great crone, and at the end it would say like, I am Hecate. So basically it represents like the goddess coming into you and being channeled into your body and entering yourself. Right? That formula I see in pagan invocations. As well, of course, we don't have as much information about them. It is well known that there were pagan mystery cults. So ceremonial magic, if you join an organization or an order or a lodge, there's a lot of stuff that deals with initiation. So what happens is you go through a series of initiations that represent your spiritual progression throughout the system. So like every couple years you'll do an initiation, you'll study more, and then you'll reach a new height in your spirituality and do another initiation. Initiation is very important because it brings us along, it gives us milestones, and of course it gives us new starts. Every time you do an initiation, your spiritual body changes. Often certain parts of your energetic body awaken, you connect with new spirits, you basically just start new things. And when we look at these ancient pagan mystical orders, though unfortunately we don't have as much data of what they were doing as we do with their Abrahamic equivalents, we see initiations, we see mysteries. Like a big thing in ceremonial magic is, of course, secrecy. So to keep secret, that literal phrasing is brought up a lot in ceremonial magic. And we know these mystery cults kept secret because we don't know what they were doing. Like literally a lot of them, we just don't really know. So we know the idea of initiatory orders, invocations, exorcisms, all of that predates Christianity and is fundamentally pagan. And so as a pagan, you can do them. Now, if you're not just willing to break out the Greek magical papyri and reconstruct things, we have modern ceremonial magic traditions that incorporate paganism. So people have a lot of thoughts about Wicca. A lot of people don't like Wicca. People have a lot of opinions on Wicca. But Wicca, traditional Wicca, to be clear, is actually a ceremonial magic tradition. So of course, modern eclectic Wicca, or, the Wiccans in your town, not ceremonial magicians, that's not what they're doing. But before Wicca became eclectic Wicca, or that very popular form of Wicca in which people don't join groups, it was actually an initiatory system. So Gerald Gardner, the founder of Wicca, actually had a coven system where there were 3 degrees where you would be initiated in, and then you would go up the degrees and then you become a priestess and you start your own group. And the way that actual traditional British Wicca rituals are structured, I've read through them, are actually quite ceremonial. There's all sorts of steps, there's circles, there's even invoking the watchtowers, which is quite similar to certain Enochian work, and all sorts of other things. Like they are ceremonial rituals. And actually, I mentioned the watchtowers is similar to Enochian. You can argue that is Enochian. Have a fun time in the comments arguing about what the watchtowers are. That's a really good, I'll bring some popcorn for that one. But Wicca itself has a lot of ceremonial magic. Like, if you read the Gardnerian Book of Shadows, which, okay, yeah, it's supposed to be secret, but that shit's on the internet, you see ceremonial magic. Like, even certain rituals that are very popular, like drawing down the moon, which is a lunar invocation that many Wiccans use on their full moon rituals, that's ceremonial. Even the timing of doing things on certain moon phases, ceremonial magic. We know modern ceremonial magic is all about timing, all about planetary timing. We have extensive evidence that ancient pagans were doing that, and modern pagan traditions do that as well. Furthermore, there is a tradition known as Alexandrian Wicca that actually brings in Enochian and creates like a pagan Enochian system, which is quite interesting. And you have systems like Thelema. Thelema is the magical system, philosophy, religion, all of that, that was sort of created by Aleister Crowley and then evolved by his contemporaries. And Thelema, look, Thelema has a lot of those hermetic structures in it, so there is, like, you know, some Kabbalistic stuff going on, there's some gematria going on, there is that, you know, influence from the stuff that it came from, which is the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. But Thelema is much more explicitly polytheistic, right? You invoke Ra, you invoke Nuit, you invoke literal gods. So it's not Abrahamic at that point, right? It just has a little bit of influence. It's kind of like, you know how like Christianity has pagan survivals? Within like Thelema, you have Christian survivals. It's really like an Ouroboros of religious evolution. That has a lot of explicitly pagan stuff. In fact, I mentioned the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, as a very popular ritual. It's a banishing ritual. There is within Thelema a ritual known as Star Ruby that is the exact same formulation as the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, but it uses the name of pagan gods. There's actually two versions of the Star Ruby. There's the original one, and then there's one in the Book of Lies, and you use either one depending on where you are in your spiritual journey. If you were like at the abyss crossing stage of Thelema, you would use the Book of Lies one. But basically, yes, like there are multiple versions of those type of rituals that Thelema actually paganized. Same with the Star Sapphire, that's kind of like a paganized ritual of the hexagram. And there's more, like a lot of the rituals within Thelema clearly have that ceremonial magic Western structure, but have been taken in a more pagan direction. So if you're interested in kind of that approach, that's a good way to do it. As well, Aleister Crowley, the creator of Thelema, actually created certain like Eleusinian rites. Of course, we don't know what the ancient Greek Eleusinian mystery cult exactly did, but there are like, he created his own like revival Eleusinian mysteries that are very, very far in the ceremonial magic direction that someone can do. As well, there have been, outside of that Hellenic and Kemetic world, there have been attempts to make Druidic and Celtic ceremonial magic. Specifically, within the Druidry world, there has been an attempt to bring together Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and Druidic techniques. There's like a whole book on it called like the Druidic Golden Dawn. I don't know if that's exactly the name of the top of my head, but there have been a lot of people who've wanted to take, you know, the Celtic deities and then bring that into a ceremonial magic structure. Because of course we don't know what the ancient Druids did. We don't have great evidence on them, so any attempt to bring back Druidry is, of course, a lot of things having to be influenced by other things to create a new tradition, but using that same spiritual lineage and history. So Druidic stuff and ceremonial magic does exist, that's out there. As well, if you follow the Nordic tradition or Ausatru or anything like that, there are totally ways to bring that into ceremonial magic. In truth, if you know the formula of a ritual, you can swap out corresponding names and corresponding things, so you can do that. And I know there are certain Nordic pagan organizations that do things like initiations, and they do certain rituals for blots or specific holidays, so that totally exists as well. And with that, I want to add that not all ceremonial magic looks like something from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn or looks like something from a historic grimoire, but if it is about creating ritual, creating a ceremony, and creating that form of dramatic ritual in which you really create an all-encompassing environment where you're doing a lengthy procession, where you're using formulas, it's still ceremonial magic, even if it doesn't look exactly like how you would expect a grimoire tradition to look. Like, that's still ceremonial magic, that's still doing a ceremonial ritual, it's not something else. So Nordic ceremonial magic also exists. You can really have ceremonial magic for every tradition. As well, in the ancient world, there was a concept known as theurgia, or divine magic of the gods. Theurgia is often compared to a modern form of mysticism, but when you look at historical records what was done in theurgia, you actually see a lot of parallels with modern ceremonial magic. In fact, you could argue ceremonial magic, since it's not about like producing material gains, it is about elevating your soul and getting closer to things, well, I mean, you can do ceremonial magic for material gains. That's not really what it's meant for, and not the most effective way to do that. You could argue if, as long as you're not doing it for material gain, ceremonial magic itself is theurgia. Like, the entire idea of connecting to your daemon, who then guides you forward and takes you towards virtue, that's theurgia. As well, a lot of the alchemical principles, or basically, you know, purifying to create something better ideas, quite parallel ideas like removing miasma and a lot of the goals that the ancient theurgists were saying they were doing. In fact, alchemy itself is a pagan survival, but I don't have time to get into all of that in this video. But yes, pagan ceremonial magic exists. You don't have to become Abrahamic. You don't have to use Abrahamic names. Now, if you do get into ceremonial magic, realistically, people are going to throw some Golden Dawn stuff at you or some Enochian stuff at you, and you might have to adapt things. You might have to just say, no, that's not what I'm looking for. But it can be done, it has been done, and it will be done. It just takes a little more creativity, and you might want to read some different texts. Like, instead of, you know, reading Eliphas Levi and, you know, the Goetia, I pronounced Eliphas Levi so horrible there. I'm sorry, French listeners. French people, I give my formal apology for how much I botch your language, but yeah, I mean, it can be done. You just might need to read different things and think outside the box. And, you know, when you're reading these Abrahamic texts, if you do decide to read them, because they are staples of the Western tradition, look for those pagan survivals. Look for what doesn't exist in the Bible. Look at what just feels a little like, that came from somewhere, didn't it? So yeah, with all of that, I am Georgina Rose. That's been our video. You can support me through Patreon. You get a bonus video every month. You get a ritual guide written by me every month, so you can try out some ceremonial magic. You can get mentor sessions monthly where I talk with you and I give you spiritual advice and help you learn and guide you through your path. As well, I am a tarot reader and professional astrologer. My booking information will be in the description if you want a tarot reading or me to look at your chart. And I also post the podcast, Pagan Perspectives by Georgina Rose. That is available on this YouTube channel or on all podcasting platforms that matter under Pagan Perspectives by Georgina Rose. As well, you can find me under .darling, D-A-A-T darling, on every platform under the sun. I'm on every one that matters at the very least. And I will see you all in the next one. Please like, comment, subscribe, and if you ring the bell and subscribe for 93 days, you will meet your holy guardian angel and you'll never need to watch this video again. And have a great day, afternoon, mid-morning, mid-evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Bye!